Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to this impromptu press conference. The purpose today is to speak directly to a number of concerns that have been raised about the Immigration and Protection Number 2 Act, a bill which will be debated tomorrow in Parliament. There has been a litany of comments made about what this bill will provide and what it will do. And I'm here today to speak to a few of those points and then take some of your questions. First of all, this bill will not take away anyone's fundamental human rights. We have considered the bill very carefully. We are mindful of our international obligations with respect to human rights and also with respect to human rights in Bermuda. So I'm here to say, first of all, there is no such provision in this bill to deny or to take away anyone's human rights. Secondly, this bill is not a part of the comprehensive immigration reform process that we are currently engaged in. This amendment is meant to bring back into law what has been the policy and practice for more than 40 years, i.e., a recognition that those who hold Bermuda status and now also those who hold PRC have a different set of rights when it comes to immigration matters than anyone else. It is a clear and common practice in all democracies, and we will continue to do so. The immigration reform process, as I had said earlier, I will continue to say, will be a collaborative process. We will engage with all key stakeholders on substantive matters of immigration reform. We have a timetable that leads to the Immigration Working Group submitting their proposals to us by the end of October, and then beginning November, there will be a bipartisan committee that will address a number of issues. You would note that as a result of the meeting last week with the Human Rights Commission, where we had a discussion about a range of issues relating to this particular bill, we have agreed that the Human Rights Commission, a body which I hold in high esteem, will review carefully any aspect relating to this amendment, and they have given an undertaking, and I have also provided a similar undertaking to accept that they will propose to this government any recommendations that they see are necessary that may impact on the provision and extension of human rights to people in Bermuda of all categories of residents. So they have that undertaking. And secondly, the Human Rights Commission, being mindful of the issues that involve immigration reform, they recognize that it is the responsibility of the government to provide for, but they also will serve as a member of the bipartisan immigration reform group that will commence work the first week in November. Those are my initial comments. I'm very happy to take any questions or comments you have, and we'll have a period of time allotted for those questions.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Johnson?
Good afternoon, Minister. Thank you for your statement. When you say it will not affect fundamental rights, what exactly do you mean? What are the fundamental human rights as far as you're concerned?
What are the fundamental human rights? Those fundamental human rights have been enshrined in law for decades. They're enshrined in the European Convention on Human Rights. They are enshrined in our Constitution. And those rights should be known to all, that it relates to issues of discrimination on basic fundamental rights about one's life and protection of one's liberty.
Right, but the Human Rights Act actually attempts to protect those rights by giving people a mechanism whereby they can complain about unfair or discriminatory treatment. By this bill takes away that mechanism, doesn't it?
This bill does not take away that mechanism at all. What this bill does, it allows for the government to treat differently Bermuda status holders and PRC holders from all other categories of people. That is a practice that is common in all countries, even those that aren't democratic, and it is a practice that we will continue to embrace.
Isn't that something that could have been done by amending the Human Rights Act itself, as opposed to removing primacy of the Human Rights Act from immigration?
Well, Mr. Johnson, you'll know that first of all, the Immigration and Protection Act also has within it a provision which makes it have primacy of in its legislation. Secondly, the amendment does in fact make a related amendment to the Human Rights Act, which is the reason why we're having this discussion today about human rights.
Any further questions, Aya, before I pass over? Jonathan?
Hi, Minister.
Good afternoon.
I understand that the whole purpose of you bringing forth this bill was to prevent those abusing the process of applying for Bermuda status. Has there been any talks of another method to prevent abuses rather than introducing this bill?
Sure. This proposed amendment is not an attempt to prevent abuse. There is a clear process by which people are legally entitled to apply for Bermuda status. This will not affect that whatsoever. We have proposed this amendment because of a recent series of interpretations by the courts in which there is a decision made that, and it's a bit technical, it conflates the issue of what is a function of government with what is a service of government. Services cannot be discriminated against in the delivery of services, but most government functions are actually functions and not service. So the recent court decision had the effect of granting a entitlement to an individual to work in Bermuda without any work permit control whatsoever. This person is not a Bermuda status holder, is not eligible for Bermuda status, but because of a recent interpretation by the courts, it has opened the door for literally thousands of people to be able to make their claim. And in the backdrop of high unemployment in Bermuda and a litany of other issues, it is inappropriate to allow for that to stand. We are appealing the decision, but this legislation is meant to bring clarity to what has always been the practice, that those who hold Bermuda status, those who hold PRC, have a fundamentally different set of rights than those who do not.
Right. Sorry, maybe I haven't properly studied this legislation.
You're asking questions, but you haven't properly studied the legislation.
No, I just want some clarity on the issue. The issue is really about national origin, isn't it? Is that what we're dealing with?
That's one of the related issues, yes.
Okay, what's the other one then?
The issue is that the Immigration and Protection Act needs to have primacy over all other pieces of legislation because in its very essence, it provides a different set of rules and laws for Bermuda status holders and PRC holders than all other categories of people. That's the fundamental rationale for this piece of legislation.
Right, but that's a very narrow part of the whole Human Rights Act. That's about being Bermudian or not being Bermudian. That's national origin.
Yes.
So, but the Human Rights Act covers a whole lot of different things. This is what I'm having difficulty, and I'm sure that members of the public are as well.
Well, let me be clear then, since there is that difficulty. Any person living in Bermuda, any person coming to Bermuda is protected under the human rights legislation. It is very clear. A work permit holder is protected under the Human Rights Act in a wide range of areas. What this bill will do will remove the protection of that person as a permit holder as opposed to any other aspect of that person's existence. So if that person is a worker who has been subjected to discriminatory processes based on gender, based on pay disparity or some other or race, for example, that person will still have the right, as a matter of law, to go to the Human Rights Commission and have that matter properly adjudicated. This is a very narrow piece of legislation in terms of what it will accomplish. It will separate the issue of immigration law and early immigration law as it relates to people. No other aspect of their existence in Bermuda is exempted from the Human Rights Act.
So would it protect them from the minister, right, enacting a policy that actually discriminates against them on one of those grounds?
Mr. Johnson, as I have said to you earlier, the very essence of immigration law is to provide a different set of laws for those who hold citizenship in the country or those who hold permanent residence compared to all other nationalities. That is the common practice in every country that I know of.
Jasmine, did I see a hand or you? No.
Sorry, so just for clarity, what
Sure.
court case are you referring to? Is it the Barbosa one or
It will be the Tavares case.
the which one?
Tavares.
Tavares case.
I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give you the exact reference, but it involves a British overseas territory citizen and the claim that she is entitled to work in Bermuda without a work permit.
Does it touch as well on the, I'm trying to remember the section 22B,
No.
so-called loophole that came up?
No, no.